Next, we look at the big dreams of a French challenger. To take us through the ambitious goals B&B Hotels has set itself. Give a big round of applause to the chain's president and CEO, Fabrice Collet.
Very impressive. Good evening. So as for optimism, I'll try to show myself as being an optimistic person, but we'll talk about the growth of our supply. I've heard a lot of things, and I have nothing really new to tell you. The microphone is cutting off. Yes, it's working? Okay. But just to take a few steps back, we're going through wonderful times. In 2019, when we ended the year, we all felt that's the reference year for the industry. Such years with such RevPARs, such activity. We won't see many like these. And we weren't wrong because the future was not going to be that great. But then we had the COVID, and today, this is a nice moment. We have RevPARs that are extraordinary after 2019, and for the entire industry, we can all align ourselves on this. And in the budget line, I don't know the rest of the business that well, but we see customers who are traveling, and they're very happy to do so. And there are price increases that are quite substantial. Solène was saying that it does not really offset inflation. Yes and no, but when you look at the margins in terms of euros, they are increasing because of the price increases. And personally, I didn't really believe in it. I didn't think that we would have price increases of 10, 15% and that the customers would pay for that. But they are paying when they have purchasing power issues and the economic context is a bit strange. And they're doing it because they love traveling. They love our business. And after years when we told them, go home, it's dangerous to be out, well, now they want to travel, they want to meet, and they're giving a meaning to our business, and that's wonderful, and we can only be happy about that. And we went through difficult times. We were just trying to survive. But once I've said that, we have to look towards the future, and we have to say what that was the past. Now, what's going to happen in the future? How will we create value in hospitality? How will we progress further? What are the traps we need to avoid? How can we move forward? And I wanted to tell you something. It's been a number of years at B&B. We were interested in the United States. Why? Because we are American shareholders. Goldman Sachs told us, hey guys, look at what's happening over there. It could be fun. I love traveling. I love taking planes. So we went to the United States. We visited hotels. We thought we'll never know what we will see there. And we went there without any real conviction. We thought, well, that's a country that has invented hospitality, chain tourism. Can we teach them something? No, I don't think so. But we saw a few interesting things. The first thing we saw, by pushing some 100 doors of budget hotels in the U.S., is the state of hospitality, motels. People would dream of that product. I have a wife who is French and American. She introduces me to Americans, and they tell me when we were 20, 15 in the 80s, our parents would take us to motels in the U.S. We loved it. It was modern, efficient, it was nice, the car in front of the motel, a clean room, a big bed, the TV, it was fantastic. But today, budget hotels in the U.S. is not that anymore. $99 at the door of the hotel, but actually it is $299 a week. So it is rented for the week, and it's rented to people who've lost their homes, and this is the last step before the trailer park for them. So that's the reality. And I've pushed a lot of doors, and that's what I saw. I saw hotels that were totally derelict, and I was really surprised. And this reminded me of a discussion I had a long time ago with Pape, who is the manager of Choice Hotel, and he told me something surprising. He said, Fabrice, in the United States, budget hotels are not oversupplied, they're under-demolished, quote unquote. And indeed, when I saw that, I thought, no, this is not possible. And the second point, we thought, well, why don't we use consultants and ask them about this? And they came back with a slide that I found very relevant. They took fun looking on TripAdvisors. They look at the scores of some 100 hotels, each of the brands in the US, and the scores could be as good as 9 out of 10. We have a few in B&B, 9 out of 10. These are beautiful hotels, but it can be as low as 2 out of 10. In France, when you look at B&B Weeby, the scores are between 6.5 and 9. And at 6.5, we have meetings and we wonder what to do. Should we keep them in the network, remove them, maintain them, reinvest? And here we've gone down to 2. So for this hotel, you're taking risks for your physical integrity in that hotel. You're laughing about it, but it is true. And that is how the American budget hotels are built. Now, what are the consequences of this? The first thing is that any person who has access to middle class in the US will say, I'm not going to go to a budget hotel, I'm going to go to the mid-scale hotels. And that's why you have the Courtiers and Zontanins are successful. It costs $120. And at that price, you spend a good night in a large room. You have too many services, but everything goes off well. So people go to the mid-scale in the US, not because they want to, but it's to avoid some bad surprises. And the second consequence of all this, when you look at the organization of this business, is something that has always surprised me, which is that at B&B, we have some franchises. We have some 50 franchises, especially in France. When you took a franchise in the B&B family, we make them pay for entry rights. So they don't always negotiate the official rate, I dare not say it here, but they pay an entry fee. In the US, it's the opposite. When a franchise joins, but I think it's the same in the premium, when we pay them key money, that's so that they can put the brand on the door. What has no price has no value. So these brands that do not keep their promises vis-a-vis the guests, so the guests avoid them when they can avoid them if they have the money. They don't even have the money to be franchised. So the consequence, the major secret of hotels, the churn rate. I signed a franchise for 10 years. After 10 years, do I renew it or not? So you can search for that on the internet. The major American operators are all listed. They have millions of figures. And this is really hidden. We don't talk about this. So I asked the controller to work on this. He came up with assumptions, and he said that among the major U.S. operators, Marriott, etc., the churn rate is 25%. So 20 to 25% of the franchise don't renew the contract with the brand, and they change brands. So the figure seems large, which is not bad. When somebody puts Marriott on the door of a hotel, this sign will remain for 40 or 50 years, which is wonderful. But when you go into budget, well, it's not the same. The churn rate is close to 60%. So when somebody puts an American budget brand on his door, on an average, he'll be fired after 15 years. So this means that he keeps it for 10 years, and if he still has the energy to manage it, he changes the sign, he puts a new sign on the door, and he gets money paid to him after 10 years. So these brands have no more value. And we were really astounded by that. And at B&B, we'll try to open hotels in the U.S. We'll hope to succeed, but not to hide the truth from you. Last week I was in Brazil. For 10 years, we've been wanting to go to Brazil. Now we have 6 hotels in Brazil. Now for 10 years now, we're not losing any money, and we wanted to accelerate things. So the U.S., we're not going to have 2,000 hotels in 3 years from now. I would be quite surprised by that, but we might have even problems. So we're going to go there slowly, but we're trying, thanks to our intuition. Now, what can we take away from all this? How do we reach that point? How do we create the system? Budget hotels in the U.S., that was high quality. Everybody would dream about it. It was a wonderful product admired by all. All of a sudden, people were not interested in it anymore. And we believe that the main cause of this is an event, a financial event that took place in the early 90s. Marriott, that was the owner of these hotels at the time, well, at one point they had financial problems because of their growth. They couldn't fund their portfolio of hotels, and they created a company called Host Marriott, which is today Host, which is the larger owner of premises on the planet. And they said, we're going to separate things. And they have investors at the stock exchange. They said, your idea is wonderful. An integrated hotel operator is worth 10 times the EBITDA. But when you separate both, an operator who is asset light and the real estate company is worth 20, and by separating both, you create value. If you haven't understood everything, that's normal, that's finance. What you must remember is quite simple. At one point, we let financial analysts dictate the policy of hotel operators, and it started from the US, it arrived in Europe, and I can tell you more, but at B&B, we do good things financially and other things that are not so good. But all this started with financial pressure from financial analysts, and I've met some of them, and I can tell you several things. A lot of them know nothing about hospitality, and for some of them, they have a good mastery of Excel sheets, and that's it. And they decide about hotel chain policies, and they say, well, for strictly financial reasons, we're going to separate on the one hand the operation of the brands, and on the other side, the operation of the assets. And this has consequences, of course. The first is mechanical. The owner of the brand who wants his brand to be robust, solid, attractive, it separates him from the operator. And the operator has two questions to put, actually just one. Do I want to operate my hotel with a heritage type of approach? It's an asset in which I want to invest. I'm interested in its quality. Or do I want to analyze it as a financial object? And then somebody would tell me, it's very simple. You don't invest. You milk the cow, as the Americans would say, and then you run and operate the thing. The good news is that in the premium hotels, people tend to invest in the assets. And when you look at what Bill Gates is doing with Four Seasons, or what the Brunei Sultan is doing with his assets, you see that they have a very heritage-like approach. And behind the hotel, you have to have a nice asset, which is very well maintained, etc. And this is true for the franchises in Europe. In general, these are family groups. They invest in their assets. They are making a lot of efforts, and the quality is there. But in the US, where these are investors who are independent and they have very family-like approaches, short-term approaches, the thing went spiraling down, and they've lost the control of the asset. Now, why am I telling this story? It's not to make a class on the US, you don't care, but to give you some ideas about our business. What are the consequences of all this in our business? Well, the first consequence is we have to be careful. We should never give up, especially in budget hotels. We have to work on quality. We have to work on our investments. And I have some good news in this area. A few years ago, some 10 years ago at B&B, I was discovering this business, and objectively, I would often ask myself this question. Finally, a budget hotel, it's nice when it is new. It's great. Customers are happy. There's a good feedback from the customers financially. It's doing well. The staff is happy. And then it ages and then becomes an old hotel. And then you have to accept it, and it becomes an old hotel. It is not attractive anymore. It has no more value. And maybe we have to transform that into a nightclub or social housing or whatever. So that's the question we put ourselves. And then in 2016, we took a bet, and the person who did the bet is there at the back, and he said, well, if we put money invested in these hotels, would it work? And we went to see our shareholders, and we told them we should invest 100 million in our network in France. What do you think about this? And I thought that financiers would say, no way, just manage without the money. But they took the bet, and they said, no problem. Do it, and we'll see if it works.
But he said, right, go off and get the money. That was a bit tricky, but we found the money. And then we realized that there was a return on investment which was absolutely huge. In other words, in a budget hotel, if you're putting 1 million, not stupidly, let's say, in the facade and in the painting, things that the customer's going to see, you're going to have a return on investment which is between 15 and 20%, which is amazing. Not many investments offer that. On a Saturday morning when I go to my French post office, they're not offering me that in my bank account. So, so that's great. So it was very effective. Next, we carried on that way, and we realized as time went by that we could buy existing hotels, reconvert them into our concept, put our name on the front, reinvest, and it worked again. One or two surprises. We took over hotels belonging to the competition. This is anecdotal. This is just 2 years back, and then somebody turns up and said, "Look, you really got taken in because they gave you a hotel. It's full of trade unions. They're frothing at their mouth. They're unmanageable. They make your life miserable. These are unbearable people. You'll never manage to run the hotel." Don't repeat this. Yeah? Stay within these four walls. What do we do? Well, first of all, we spoke to these people with a state of respect and dignity. We realised that they were human beings. That they loved their job, and then we invested in the hotel. And all of a sudden, staff's buy-in became huge because the hotelier likes customers that are smiling. They like Fabrice hotels. They like, being able to receive the customer, and the customer says, "I had a lovely night." So, at the end of the day, these trade unions are unhappy, possibly, about what they were experiencing previously. When we told them, "Look, gentlemen, we're going to be investing together in your hotel. We're going to improve your daily life. We're going to improve your working conditions. We're going to improve your interaction with the customers." We gave them a source of pride, and things that seemed to be blocking points actually became points that opened things up. We never had any problem running those hotels. We had people fighting tooth and nail for that hotel because they're very proud of it, because the hotel was welcoming and nice. So basically, by investing, it's a win for the customer, it's a win for the staff, for the shareholders. Everybody's happy. So that's the first conclusion. The second point that I draw your attention to is the mid-scale. Now, in my view, today, there's a trend of pronounced consumer mode today is such that people want to get their clothes from Chanel. They want to go to a hotel which is fabulous, with an amazing lifestyle experience, with nightclubs and what have you, with a rooftop terrace. We know this very well. Airbnb doesn't do that. And then the next day, they want to have a straightforward budget night, if you like, by being mindful of the price. Now, these are poles apart, aren't they? You're going to get an experience on one hand, memorable rather. Second, and then on the other side, simplicity, price, etc. But in between the two, it's tricky. Those hotels that are not sexy enough, in inverted commas, to make you dream, if you like, and too expensive to do budget. Now, this is something that draws my one or two thoughts, and I don't know whether we've got a problem possibly with these hotels in the middle. But people say, no, just look at the United States. Well, then it goes back to what I was saying previously. In the United States, the mid-scale hotels, they work because the budget hotel doesn't do its job. But when there's a quality budget offering, well, the mid-scale problem becomes a problem. I'm talking about traditional vanilla mid-scale. I mean, I don't want to go out on a limb and talk about things I don't know about. But anyway, I find that striking. Next, since I've talked about in these financial approaches, which I don't like very much, now I'm going to tell you what I think is the right way to go. So it strikes me that in the future, the winners in the hotel business will be those who manage to bring together under one umbrella the brand and the assets, to align management of both without setting everything out of kilter. And for me, in the budget hotel business, the two rising brands that I respect the most, and I think they're just absolutely fabulous in the way that they offer constant value, Motel One in Germany, premiering in the UK, I mean, there are lots of exceptions to it, but the rule is that they have integrated this way of going. In Premier Inn, it holds very true, because every week there's an article that comes out, written by these analysts who are saying 6 billion on the stock exchange. If you separate the assets from the rest, you would only be tenths of the price. But the thing is, they haven't forgotten this integration, quality. And quality is the key to customer satisfaction, and customer satisfaction leads to the success of our business as a whole. So it doesn't matter that the real estate is worth less. So in the future, perhaps we should be merging assets and brands. And I think that's the next trend. And I think in that trend, we at B&B, as I was saying, we're not totally clear about this. Now, leasing, well, it's a small sin, if you will, isn't it? Because, look, I mean, it's a foible. Here, in my job, I invest in these hotels. I mean, if I want them to receive a Mark 7, I need to put the money up. You know, it's not asking a partner to invest and then expecting to wait 2 years. No, we have to stump up the money. But, you know, I know full well that the assets are worth more than their financial book price. But, you know, this has been true for the financial minds for a while, that the asset is just worth its financial price, but it's worth more than that. And the good news is that with rising interest rates, real estate has more value than assets, it's said, but as the interest rates are rising, then things have become aligned. And I think we've reached this window of time, historic window of time, and that's where we are now. And we have to be working on this the next months and years, bearing in mind that if shareholders learn I've just said that, my phone is going to be ringing in a few minutes' time, so just keep it to yourself. That would be kind. So that's the thrust of my talk. I've got two further points which were looked at rather by the previous speakers, and they spoke about it more accurately than me. But it all comes together. How can we keep this industry going? We've got two poisons, haven't we? First is lack of manpower. Because why is that lack of manpower? That the work that is being asked is not lovely, and leisure is much better than working. And working, you have to work 24/7, you know, desperate hours, unsociable hours. So it's not fabulous, is it? But it so happens that in hotels we need manpower. So how do we improve this? Well, I think there are two obvious ways to go. The first, how do you go about not using staff any old how when you don't need staff? This has been talked about for years. But automatic check-ins is better than a check-in which is with a weighty procedure. Having people welcoming customers, to welcome them, to suggest a restaurant, to offer one or two attractions and amenities, that's good. But the old-fashioned check-in, I had that last week. You have to fill out a form. It takes ages. I mean, it's not a fabulous experience. It's really irritating. So we can improve upon that. And I think it's a win-win for everybody. There are, I mean, even in-room cleaning, for example, where you have options. You can have a robot, that will be cleaning the carpet while the cleaner can do everything else. That person doesn't have to bend down so much. And so there's more person in the process. There's more of a human concern in the process. We all need to work on this. Now, Olivier talked about this very well, namely rising up the social ladder, training. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because it's been covered well this morning, but we're getting involved as well. And we're launching a CFA program. We're making inroads enthusiastically. We want to have positive discrimination right up to the hilt, You know, if students have offered desperately poor profiles, the happier we are. We want to get them on the right track. And in our business, there are so many stories to tell, so many good stories from birth. They weren't predestined to have fabulous careers in France. But now they run independent hotels, and they'll be role models. Anecdotally, about this very point, we're being helped on this by a training company run by Martin Hirsch. I met him, and he said, look, it's straightforward, organizing training. But there's a question here. And I said, well, what's your question? And he said, have you found outlets for these people? He was worried that jobs couldn't be ultimately found for these people who are receiving training. So look at the discrepancy between the reality that we live, if you like, we experience, we find it difficult recruiting, and what's going on the ground elsewhere, where, you know, the communication work on, there's a fabulous social ladder here, the hotel business. That understanding that exists isn't that self-evident. The second poison, which is mortal, a mortal poison, deadly poison, is what's peddled by people saying that traveling is desperately bad because you're leaving a horrible carbon footprint. This is something you hear more and more, becomes more and more widespread. Some of my friends say, and I took a plane, but people didn't want to go with me because they didn't like it because of the carbon footprint. So how do we fight against this? Well, my dream on this is this, that in the future, in hotels, in traveling, this is starting to emerge, by the way, that we can have labels, like on cars or fridges, let's say, with a kind of a Nutri-Score, A being green, F being red. But look, if we do this, it will be something, that will be such that we'll all be fighting to be A. There'll be people rush in to invest to get A. It'll be very incentivizing and effective. Also, France is a dream location. We have an energy mix from a carbon footprint, which is absolutely exceptional. We've got a transport network, which is remarkable, with a rail network, which is incredible. We're very much ahead with investing in our buildings. We're not perfect, but if you compare, you see that traveling in France, in all likelihood, is one, if not the destination, which is the most eco-friendly that there is. And I think we all need to drive that thought forward. And I think that a lot can be gained from that. Thanks for your attention. I finished, and I think...
Ah oui, est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
Any questions, actually? Sorry for Fabrice. I'll take two questions.
Fabrice,
here's a question.
Une question et un témoignage. J'ai passé quelques
And
années
a testimonial, if
dans
you like, a few years back, in budget hotellery,
concurrent de BNB.
in a
Et je crois qu'il y a une
B&B
chose
competitor. There was something
que tu as développé qu'il faut bien
that you
comprendre,
expanded upon, but
c'est qu'à
which
partir du
needs to be
moment
understood.
où on est à la fois
Namely,
propriétaire de
when you
son
are
actif,
an owner of your
on est
asset,
aussi l'employeur.
you're also an employer.
Il y a toute une dynamique
There's a
que
dynamic
vous avez
there.
en tant qu'employeur unique
As a
dans
single
la
standing
dynamique sociale,
employer,
parce qu'on
you
parle
have a
d'escalier
role
social.
with
Lorsque
the
vous avez
social
affaire
ladder
à des
to
propriétaires
play
qui sont
when you've
multiples
got
et qui veulent surtout
owners
pas
that are
reconnaître
multiple, if you
les
will, and they
avantages
don't want
acquis
to
d'un côté et
acknowledge
d'un autre, l'escalier, ça ressemble pas à une
that,
passerelle, c'est assez
then the
difficile.
social
Donc je crois
ladder
que, et moi j'ai
loses all its
assisté à
rungs.
la réussite
And I've
de BNB,
seen
et je dois
B&B's
dire
success, and
que
I
je
must
pense que
say
le modèle,
that I think
notamment de faire que
that the
BNB
model,
soit en même temps détenteur
which
sur
means
actifs ou
that
loueur de
you
ses actifs,
own
c'est
or
aussi parce que
lease
c'est
your
effectivement
assets.
le personnel à un
It
employeur
works
unique.
because
Il y a
you're a
une vraie
single standing
dynamique, il y a un sentiment
employer.
d'appartenance.
There's a
Et il
dynamic
y a
of a
après
sense of
derrière des
belonging
économies
among
induites,
staff, and there's
des économies d'échelle, une
economies
politique
of
d'investissement
scale,
qui est
there's
cohérente,
a
etc. Donc je crois que
investment
c'est
policy which
parfait,
is
et
consistent,
je
which
regrette
holds together, so it's
que
perfect. And I know
d'autres
it's a
groupes
shame that
économiques n'aient
other
pas finalement
economic groups
suivi cette
or
voie.
budget groups, if you will, haven't gone down the same road. So there was no question in actual fact. Thanks very much. Another question? And then we'll round up, because I suspect we're all very thirsty.
Bonjour, merci
Yes,
pour,
thank you very much
pour ce speech
for
très
your
inspirant en effet. Moi, ma
inspirational
question elle est
speech.
toute
It's very
simple,
true.
c'est sur un
My
sujet
question is
qui
straightforward.
m'intéresse beaucoup et qui me touche, c'est
An
celui de
area
la discrimination
which is
positive.
very important for me.
Il y a un
It's
énorme enjeu
positive
aujourd'hui en
discrimination.
France,
Now,
c'est justement
the stakes are high in
déjà
France.
d'embaucher quelque part cette
Namely,
population,
to
notamment par
recruit
exemple si
these
je parle
people.
de la banlieue,
If I talk
mais
about
aussi
the
on
inner
a cité le
city
cas
areas, the equivalents in France at
du
least.
salarié afghan,
If you
c'était
talk about,
Olivier je pense,
I think it was
sur
Olivia
le
talking
cas
about the
d'Esther. Je pense surtout
employee.
à cette population,
I'm
on
thinking
va dire,
about
de
these people,
l'immigration
these migrants, if you will.
aujourd'hui clandestines ou pas, mais
whether
on sait
they
qu'aujourd'hui, dans
are
les rues de
official
Paris, il y
or
a énormément
otherwise.
de
But
gens qui viennent
in
de
Paris,
partout,
we know that the
qui
people
ont choisi
have
la
flooded
France
in
comme terre
from
d'accueil,
everywhere,
mais
that have
qui
chosen
peut-être
France
n'ont
as
pas
their
tous, et on
destination,
le
but
sait
perhaps
également,
not all
le
of
permis de
them
travail, puisqu'ils
have
sont
official
considérés comme
papers
étant
because
immigrés
they're seen as
clandestins, en tout cas
illegal
pas
immigrants, or at
en
least
situation régulière pour pouvoir travailler.
not
Comment
they don't have
comptez-vous
official papers, so
faire
working
face à cet
papers.
enjeu,
So
notamment
how can
politique,
you
notamment avec les
tackle
pouvoirs
this,
publics, pour dire,
particularly
bon,
in
il y a
respect
des
to
gens
the
qui
public authorities,
peut-être
to
si on
say,
leur tend
look,
la main
if we
pour
just
avoir un
gave them
vrai
an
plan de carrière et
opportunity
pour
to give
avoir de
them a
l'épanouissement,
career
etc.,
trajectory and
ils vont
have them
certainement
flourish,
choisir ce chemin-là
they
que
would
celui peut-être de
choose
vendre
that
des
road
cigarettes
rather
à la
than
sauvette
selling
et vendre d'autres
cigarettes
choses
in
pas
the
très
metro
légales.
or
Merci
other
beaucoup.
illegal things. Thanks very much. It's a great question. Now, if I say that I'm going to be recruiting illegal immigrants, then I'll be taken off in a caged truck. So I don't think that should be done. No, but having said that, I mean, I've just got a personal point here. I have a niece who works in a not-for-profit to help immigrants, and she tells me that you spend a lot of time giving them papers or not, but in any case, in the interim, they can't work, and they end up developing hate for France because they're saying this country forces me to sit on my hands. It's a shame. I mean, it's anecdotal. I mean, it's just something that my niece told me. But in respect of what we do, first off, our first school we opened in 1993, where it mattered, because we thought it was right to do it there and then. We've drawn hugely on our network of hoteliers who work under franchise or otherwise. They've joined us, 15, 20 years back. And through their work, through their energy, their enthusiasm, and despite every obstacle, in inverted commas, I mean, obviously, society as a whole has foisted obstacles on them, but they've gone down their road, they've gone up the ladder, and they've become managers, respectable managers, and they've become role models. In other words, they're able to explain to their inner circle that there's better than just simply selling cigarettes in the metro or worse. So it's that work that has to be contemplated. And then the grapevine. Success stories. You just don't want to lie, because at the end of the day, you want these people who come to train with us, and we've already. Well, previously it was all done not in marching order. Now we're organising it. Hopefully we can industrialise the system. And if everything works well, it won't be 10. It'll be 100 or even 1,000 people. People will stay with us, or people will go beyond. So much the better.
But we need to have the right perspectives, and we are helped at B&B with growth. We were talking about this earlier on. Last year, we opened some 100 hotels. It's a joke, but next week, we're going to have a celebration to inaugurate our hotel in Guimarães in Portugal. And we have 750 today, so we're still lagging behind, but we had opened new hotels until this celebration. But there are new prospects. And since there's growth, the social ladder is there. And it's a bit of a political topic. So behind this thought on growth, always more, the economics, etc., there's the question about the opportunities for the people who are working for us. Thank you. Thank you, Fabrice.